finger and you pull the chain right off the cassette. Okay? So, next thing I'd like to do is if there's nowhere to lean your bike, wherever you flatted, go ahead and lean it down. But you want to lean, don't lean it on the side where the chain is. Lean it on the other side. And you've got your pack here with everything in it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use this pack here. It's got all my stuff in it. And what I'm going to do actually is show you what you have in here. Thank you. Okay. So these are the tools you need. Obviously you need a tube. You're going to need CO2, or you can use a pump. Either one. CO2 canisters. You have the valve. You've got a small little toolkit just in case. And I got my tire irons. I usually just carry 2. And that's really all you're going to need. So, as far as the flat goes, I have to go back up. First thing, well, obviously this tire has got air in it, but when you flat it, you'll have most of the air already out. So I'm going to take all the air out. Okay. So this is the state it's in when you've completely flat. So the first thing I like to do is I want to start from the other side of my stem. So I start everything over here. What I like to do is just like I use my knees on the bike, I use my hips, legs and my hips to really, it's like my table, okay? So, first things though, I forgot, I gotta get this, I wanna get the tire out. So what I do is I use the tire iron and I put it underneath the lip of the tire. Okay, now, if this is a tire that's tight, very tight on the rim, you may need to use that second one. So I'm going to take the first one, and this tire iron goes right here on the, what is that called? Spoke. Thank you. Okay, then I'm going to take my second one, and I'm going to put it right next to the first tire iron. That way I can get a grip on there and get it really nice underneath. And then I start my whole turn all the way around the tire itself. Okay, so now I have just one lip of the tire off of the rim. Now I can get in, take the tube out. Again, opposite from the stem, because now once I get to the stem, just pull it out. Now, what you want to do if you have flatted and you most likely have got something in there, it's always wise to take the last couple fingers and really check inside. Make sure that that piece of glass or thorn is out, completely out. Go all the way around. If you don't feel anything, and you do a quick visual, nothing's there. Great. Now it's time we can put the tire back, or put our new tube. For this demonstration, I'm going to use just the same tube. So it's pretty flat. I mean, I shouldn't say flat. There's not much air in there. What I like to do is give it some form, because then I can maneuver it better to see on the rim of the tire. So I will blow a little air in there. And I'm closing it up. Now you don't have to close it up to hold the air in there. And sometimes it's a good idea maybe not to, because when you do put the CO2 valve on, you don't want that to be closed. If that's closed, you can blow up the valve on the CO2 and cause some damage of that, and it will not work for you. So if you do close it, make sure you remember to open it again when you put the valve back in for the CO2. So now I found my spot. We're going to put the stem in. Now this is really, if you practice this often, it becomes really, really easy. All you're doing is manipulating this tube back into the tire rim. At the same time, you're gonna start seating that tire back on the wheel. So I do that process. Again, I've got my tire, or excuse me, my wheel right on my hip. I can start here by the stem. When you take things off, you start from the other side of the stem. When you put things back on, it's good wise to start at the stem. It's a good thing to know. So I'm using my hands and a lot in my thumb work. So I'm taking the tube and I'm pushing it into its spot. At the same time, I'm seating the tire. But note that I'm holding on to the side that's already seated so that this doesn't come undone. So this part's already seated, so I'm going to move my hand over to the left and do the whole process again. Seat the tube, seat the tire, okay, and then move my hand over again. You could do a small amount at a time to make it much easier for yourself. Okay, seat the tube, and then the tire. So it's really just a matter of pushing this in, making sure it's underneath the lip of the tire, and then seating the tire itself on top. And again, if I'm holding here, I'm not going to lose the work I've already done because I'm holding it. I will occasionally look back to see where I'm at over here, make sure it's not coming out. Chances are though, once it's seated, it's not going to come out on you. What will come out on you is the work, or is the area which is just directly back from where you're trying to seat that tire. So that's why you really want to hold on to that part the whole time. See, that's still there, still seated. And then I can move my hand over, manipulate that tube, seat the tire, and then keep turning the wheel. So now, as you know, when we get to the end, this is when it gets a little difficult. This is when we can either use our muscles, or we can go back to our tire irons to really get to guide this tire back onto the wheel. Now in this case, this tire is very pliable and I'm able to do it with my hands. Now some are not going to be that pliable and you won't be able to do that. So then what I would do, for purposes of showing you, I'm just going to open this up a little again. So I would want to do it close to the stem but not directly on the stem. This is a very precarious place right here. It's hard to get that in there. But right here is a good place. I would hold on to one side so that it doesn't come off. And then I take the tire iron, if it's backwards, when you try to get the tire out, you have the slip facing at you. When you want to put this on, you have this lip facing the tire itself. Because what you want to do is flip that on there. Same thing here. Flip it on. And that will guide that tire, the tire back onto the wheel. So now that I have the the tube in the tire, I want to make sure that I've seated the tube correctly in there and that it's not being pinched by this tire. You've heard that you can get pinch flats. So the best way to do that is really just visually look inside. Make sure you can see the rim of the tire. Sometimes they're different colors. In this case, it's blue. So I just make sure I can see blue all the way around. Checking and checking, okay. I see no tube. If I see no tube, it is inside that tire, seated well, and good to go. I give it a little punch kind of just to get that all seated well. Okay. We are done with putting the tube in. Now the fun part is the CO2 canister. To get this started, you've got your valve, you've got your CO2. You want to tighten this onto the CO2. You want to give it a good, snug, tight twist, because that is what opens up the CO2. It actually breaks the rim up at the top, and it puts a hole right there. And you can kind of hear when you do it. I mean, you don't want to go too hard, but you want to open that up. So it's a good snug twist. I know it's open because I actually heard it break the seal. So once the seal's broken, even though I know that I kept this open, I'm going to check it again, because if that's closed and this goes on, there's nowhere for this CO2 to go, and it completely shatters and blows up the whole valve. So what you want to do is, okay, it is completely open, good to go. Now, in this case, I like to use the ground for my to hold the wheel itself. I take my right hand, could be left too, but you want to take the hand that you're not going to fill the air with, and you want to hold that stem down so it can't go up. There's nowhere for it to go. It's kind of real good for control and grip. Take my canister. Now, in this valve, all I have to do is push up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push up like this, where I can hear it going in. There we go. So let's say I want to have all of it, not all of it. This is a 60 gram. We'll discuss that in a second. You'll be able to feel the tire itself and all the CO2 going in. Once it feels real solid, and again, this is from experience, you need to feel what it feels like to have 120 pounds of pressure in there, 120 PSI. And that's by feeling your other tires when they've got all the CO2 that they need, or all the air. So you can give it by feel and say, okay, that's good. Pull this off. Close up your stem. Good to go. Now these are 60, these are, I think this is the 60. You have two. One, I like to, these are 16 grams, correct. I like to have the larger gram CO2 cartridges, because I know that if some were to spill out, I'll still have enough to fill this. But you don't need this full 16 grams for some of the tires at 120 PSI. So it's not necessary to use it all. But again, that's by experience and feel of how much I want to really have in there. The remaining, I just go ahead and I put it back in my bag with all my tools. You really don't need to put these guys on, so I leave those off. Now, the process of putting this wheel back on the bike. So, I bike back up to a upright stance, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the bike. I always like to lift from the saddle, or you can lift from below, but this is a good place for me to lift. I'm going to come back around, and I want to pull the chain from the top so that I can manipulate it back onto my wheel. So, and then the whole thing comes off. Okay, and that could happen. So if that does happen, and for some reason with this specific bike, we've been having problems with the chain coming off. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull that around again. We're going to keep it on the small chain ring. And then, again, it may occur again. Bring this in. We pull this chain right over the first cog set. Because now that we have it locked in, okay, then we want to seat the wheel back on to the bike.